I've always considered those to be, and I don't want to say religion because it's not really the same thing, but when you are involved in artistic practice, that can very much become your spiritual center. Uh, now, there's another person talking about living in the city, and she fills her apartment with plants and herbs and green life. She cleanses with Dead Sea salt baths and other herbal healing baths, which she really loves and makes her feel connected. Whether or not they actually do that, it works for her. Remember, we've talked a lot about uh, placebo effects and things that trigger, responses, relaxation responses, and positive responses in the mind. For Megan Rybar, who works at a yoga studio, meditation, yoga, and personal ritualistic acts provide her with a similar feeling of transcendence. It's all about that feeling of connectedness and being, or the sense of something beyond the physical. She says she's wary of the term spirituality, okay? Instead, seeing her practices and rituals as a form of self-care. The practices I consider spiritual are the things I do to care for myself in a deep way, to calm myself when I'm distressed, to create meaning out of the experiences of life. I think that's a pretty accurate description of spirituality. And you can see how that's different from religiosity. She says she isn't sure whether she believes in a higher power, but she keeps an altar full of objects that are symbolically significant to her, and sometimes performs rituals in which she calls on deities or deity archetypes. As someone who deals with mental health issues, she says, I do not often believe that there's divine order to things, and practices like these can be a way to create beauty out of the chaos I often feel I'm surrounded by. Often people who have sought spirituality outside of organized religion have done so because they do not feel that there is a place for them in their childhood faith. Trish Richards, a dog walker in New York, described to Vox how it felt to be an out lesbian in her progressive Lutheran church. I never felt comfortable in the church as a social unit, particularly after coming out as gay, Richards said. I essentially shed all of my religious ties out of self-preservation. It was easier not to have the hard gay and Christian conversations. So religion grew even more into this very private and personal thing for me that not a lot of other people were involved in. Likewise, Scott Stanger, a photographer in New York, said that although he was raised as a conservative Jew, complete with a bar mitzvah and religious classes, I think either I missed the point or they did not teach the point of spirituality. Now, he said, he's put off by the politics and intrusion of religion, seeing it as outmoded at best and toxic at worst. I have to say I kind of agree. Yet each of the people I spoke to agree that spirituality in some sense is beneficial to them, even if they see that spirituality as opposed to organized religion. Their anecdotal evidence bears out another element of the study. Spiritual people are generally happier than non-spiritual people. According to the study, 61% of spiritual but not religious people and 70% of spiritual and religious people reported being very or completely satisfied with their life, compared to just 53% of those who were religious but not spiritual and 47% of those who were neither. So that's an interesting statistic right there. One thing many of the subjects had in common was a desire for community. One thing their more solitary ritual practices hadn't been able to give them. Most said that community was something they missed, and many reported fond memories of a communal aspect to their childhood religions. I don't tend to like uniformity of practice and belief because that gets a bit culty to me, said Rybar. It often means people stop asking questions. That's why I'm shy of organized spiritual community, but I sometimes long for more people to share things with. And that's an interesting point, and I think we're finding different ways to create community through our connections, not only you know personal connections, but through social media. We now have ways of connecting with people that we didn't have before. And so one of the things I'm trying to do with this show, as a matter of fact, is to create a community for people who resonate with the things I talk about on this show. And I would love to see that happen. As I mentioned, I have started a blog section on a platform called the Mighty Networks. It's a network for the spirit and wellness show. And it will be a network of people who can talk and communicate and share ideas and share stories and even perhaps products they found or enjoyed. And I really feel like it's something that's necessary right now. So I do hope you'll look me up again. I'm on Facebook, H. Wilkinson Media on Facebook. You'll be taken to the metaphysical media page there, and you'll find postings of this show and other information, and you can leave me a message. Love to hear from you. Okay, now we're going to move on to give you a few wellness tips, and then I'm going to introduce you to the new segment of our show on meditation. So first, a couple of tips. Now we're in winter weather for many of us in parts of this country, and there are a lot of people who believe that changes in temperature, particularly colder temperatures, trigger joint pains, and this has been a belief that's been a long-standing belief. And recently, a study team from Harvard University and the University of Washington in Seattle collected weather data and monitored Google searches about joint pain during that same period. And this study showed that as temperatures rose, peaked at 73 degrees and then dwindled at higher temperatures. Hip pain searches peaked at 83 degrees and also became less frequent at higher temperatures. Searches for joint pain dropped during rainy weather. The researchers suggested that the reason searches for knee and hip pain rose as the weather warmed might reflect increased outdoor activity and physical challenges rather than the weather itself. So the latest research here suggests that there isn't any direct link between weather changes and pain. And there have been numerous other studies that have found no clear association between things like back pain or knee arthritis pain and temperature, humidity, air pressure, rain, or wind direction. There was one study that found a link between falling temperatures and an increased rate of heart attacks, but the researchers seem to believe that was because of the frigid weather that made that happen. So don't fear the cold weather. It really doesn't have an effect unless you believe it does. And again, that brings us back to placebos and nocebos and that idea. Because if you believe it's cold out, my joints are going to ache, that's probably what you're going to create. All right, let's talk about foods now. Foods that you might want to eat and foods that you might want to stay away from. Foods, besides nourishing us and filling us up when we're hungry, also contribute to all aspects of our health. So we like to look at those things holistically. So, for instance, your mental health and your mood is affected by the foods that you eat. Now, there's a new research about age ranges and what kinds of foods help to keep a happier and healthier mood for these different age groups. And these food groups, and the study is linked to the changes in brain chemistry. And the analysis suggests that mood in young adults ages 18 to 29 depends on consuming meat, which leads to production of serotonin and dopamine, brain chemicals known to influence mood. So that brings a change in brain chemistry for that age group, and that might be somewhat of a problem for vegetarians and vegans. A lot of young people in that age group, identify with that, but apparently consuming meat brings a better mood. For people over 30, it appeared that the fruits and other foods that increase antioxidants really brought in a positive mindset in that age group. And that group was supported best by avoiding coffee, foods high on the glycemic index. Those are foods that are, that shoot your triglycerides and your cholesterol up. And by not skipping breakfast, all of which can activate the stress response and make mental distress more likely. So, if you're in one of those age groups, then you know what to do and what to stay away from. So, there's that. Now, let's also talk about foods to stay away from. Now, the biggest foods that you want to stay away from for your heart, and you'll need to look at your ingredients on a lot of products. You want to avoid trans fats. Now, the good thing is a lot of products have taken trans fats out of the picture altogether, but there are still some that have them. Also, heated polyunsaturated fats like soybean oil for deep frying. These fats are oxidized and damaged, and if you consume them regularly, they can contribute to a variety of negative health effects. So, things that still have trans fats, some cooking oils still do, processed foods, snack foods, so you'll want to look at your labels on those. Excessive animal protein has been shown to raise levels of homocysteine, which is an amino acid that can contribute to heart disease. Again, and he suggests swapping out animal protein with soy protein. Not everybody can do that. Not everybody has a taste for that sort of thing. If you enjoy tofu or soy, that's great. But the main thing to keep in mind is, don't go to excess with the animal protein. It's all about proportions, really. Rather than have a 12-ounce steak or a 16-ounce steak, cut it in half. Have a 4 or 8-ounce steak. And fill the rest up with maybe some veggies or salad or something else. You don't have to go all vegan to change your diet in a healthy way. Watch out for refined carbohydrates. Those you find in crackers and cakes and cookies and soft breads and chips and sodas. And sodium. Look at the labels for the amount of sodium. You see them a lot in processed foods. So, look at your labels. You're going to come in contact with some of these things, but you can't eliminate a lot. One thing that I've eliminated completely from my diet, and other doctors, including our favorite Dr. Weil, says that you ought to avoid are soft drinks, sodas. They are terribly bad for you for a number of reasons. They can cause diabetes, obesity. The high levels of sugar in those things have been known to cause diabetes. The difficult part of this, for a lot of people who had sodas regularly, is that it is addictive. The sugar in them is addictive.